What's up, guys? It is the Black Hills Project fellas, back with another little podcast type deal thing. It's been quite a while since we've posted anything, but we've both been pretty busy, had a lot going on in our lives, and haven't had a lot of chances to get together. And when we have, we've just been shooting and training and haven't had a lot of time to do any kind of recording. So we thought we'd just do a little online thing here today and talk about some of the lessons that we've been learning with our, I guess, precision carbine journey that we've been on for the last few years.
If you want to call it that, yeah.
Yeah. I don't,
Um,
yeah. I've heard it called long range carbine, precision carbine, gas, whatever buzzword you want to use. I prefer to say precision over long range because long range is kind of a relative
yeah, it's
term.
subjective for what you're shooting, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean long range for 5.56 or 2.23 at could be like 800 yards, where for 6.5 or like 3.38 it's not. So yeah, I
Right.
guess the first thing I thought we could kind of dive into was just how to build a precision carbine or a precision AR-15, and kind of what parts and things we've found important for that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's like a base that you kind of have to, I guess, talk about too. Like when earlier you just said the distance is relative. I think you have to be realistic when it comes to the 223 and 5.56 caliber. Um, we've gotten hits well past 1,000 yards. Um, is that a very, I guess, repeatable thing to do? Not necessarily. You can get it close, but also at the same time, you have to be a little realistic. So like we've kind of come up with like 800 yards is about, or 800 meters, which would be about 900 yards roughly. Is about a distance that is relatively repeatable, with good equipment, good data, good bullets, good barrel, and all that. Um, that's about the max that I would say a properly built precision carbine is going to go. So when we talk about long range, from going on, or going forward, I guess, that's about the distance that we're talking about, is about 800 yards and in. Um, but yeah, I mean, just to get along with the builds, I think you have more of a tailor-made rifle for what we're talking about. Mine is still the Block 2 that has been featured a bunch. While I still believe it's a good rifle for it, and I've gotten hits past 800 yards with it. I mean, again, as it's been shown in the video that we've done, I mean, we got it on camera at like 850, multiple hits, um, in pretty windy weather. I don't think what I have is necessarily ideal. And what I mean by that is I think that the barrel could be a little bit longer for precision. And I know you're shooting a 14.5 as well, but you also have a bit of a heavier barrel profile, which doesn't necessarily mean it's more accurate or faster. And by faster, I mean higher velocities. Um, but you can shoot higher strings of fire, which is more, right, right. I've noticed that mine definitely opens up after you've shot it a bunch. Which, I mean, you have to shoot it a decent amount for it to start opening up. But I mean, once you get, again, longer ranges with these bullets, opening up definitely is not what you'd want. Because you have to be fairly precise when shooting these. They're not as forgiving as bigger bullets like a 6.5 or 6 Creed or 6 Dash or something like that. It's, you got to be pretty on. Um,
And I would argue that like really neither of us have what I would say is like a ideal like precision carbine or long range AR, because in my mind that would be something like you know, 18 to 20 inch rifle with, you know, maybe like maybe a 3 to 18 or maybe even more glass on it, and you know, like no light or laser or anything on it, and you know, just really tailor built for that. But what we do both have is guns that are built for accuracy and our level or our standard of precision, and but also serve the purposes that we want to use them for, which is like I take mine coyote hunting a lot. I do night vision shooting with it. I go, you know, I take it with me when I go camping. So I mean, if you're talking about like, hey, I'm going to build this AR straight for precision and for just long range, you know, that's definitely not what we really have built.
Yeah, there's different avenues for that, and that's what
Yeah,
we do have, I guess, experience in that. So we'll talk about that. I don't think it's very productive to keep talking about the same guns that we've been shooting for the
yeah.
past like year and a half, 2 years now.
There's YouTube videos on the channel on both of them.
Right. So like if we're talking about straight up precision, my ideal build is something that actually I built a year ago and just sold because I wasn't shooting it enough. I was shooting the Block 2 more. But I've been doing some thinking, and I don't think I've told you this. But I kind of regret doing that. Not necessarily in a sense of that exact rifle because it wasn't perfect. I would have gone with an 18-inch, but it I do kind of miss having a purpose-built precision rifle.
It would have been awesome for like competitions and stuff like that for sure.
Right. So just not to get off like I always do on my tangents. Let's talk about this build here. I'll go into what I think is what I would think is probably what I would do.
Uh-huh.
And we can just kind of go down the list, but it would, I mean, obviously AR-15 platform. It doesn't really, the receiver set doesn't matter.
It needs to be in spec, you know.
Yeah, well that matters, but that's kind of a given.
Yeah.
Don't buy
Yeah.
out of spec crap.
Yeah.
But right now, the only barrel I think I'd buy for a precision carbine is the new Sons of Liberty. I think it's the broadsword barrels.
Yeah.
They're super thick profile, and they use a 5x8 by whatever that other number is. It's basically like a 308 or 6.5 thread pitch, because the barrel is so thick, which is super nice, I think. I know a few people I've talked to. Oh, I can't remember what his name is on Instagram. Like Hijack Lives or something like that. I don't remember his exact name, but I've talked to him, and he runs the 16-inch version on his, and he says it's amazing. Which, I mean, take one guy on Instagram's word for it, but I've heard multiple things that it's a really, really good barrel, and it's a Sons of Liberty barrel. So I mean, it's gonna take a while to shoot out a 5.56 barrel, but they'll replace it for free. That's kind of like their thing, is if you shoot out a barrel, they'll replace it for free. I mean, again, with 5.56, that's like what?
Yeah.
30, 40, 50,000 rounds. So I mean, I don't think you're going to be shooting that out very soon, but
depending on how picky you are too, but like, you know, how choosy you are about when your groups start opening up. I know some guys are really picky about that, but
yeah, I mean, we ain't talking PRS. Those guys, the minute it's not half MOA anymore, they're like, okay, time to buy another $1,000 barrel.
Exactly. So, but to kind of take a step back, let's talk about what you do want to look for in a barrel as a whole. So first of all, you're going to want to look at length. You're going to want to decide what kind of velocity, you know, you're going to want for your build. Obviously, the longer your barrel, to a certain extent, the more velocity you're going to squeeze out of it. You're going to want to look at your barrel profile. You're going to want to look at your twist on your barrel, because that's going to play into what kind of projectiles you're going to stabilize well and what's going to shoot well through your barrel. And then obviously you're just going to want to look at kind of that company's history and what kind of you know, accuracy other people are getting out of those barrels. So I guess that's kind of the main things I think of when I look at a barrel. You can let me know if there's anything else you think of, but
Yeah.
the barrel for
Also,
me for a precision build is definitely like kind of the heart of like you got to get the barrel right or nothing else is gonna go well.
100%. I mean, the barrel is, like you said, that's the biggest thing in the gun. And I'll just preface this by saying also, um, when we're talking about these kind of things, it's a given that we're shooting with heavyweight bullets, like 77 grain. We
Yep.
I don't shoot anything below 77 grain for precision long range carbine stuff. I mean, maybe I've shot some 75 grain, but I only shoot 77 grain.
Yeah.
I don't
The
believe that there's any reason to be shooting anything lighter if you're going to be, if this is your thing that you want to do. I don't believe that there's anything, you shouldn't cheap out. You shouldn't try anything. I, unless it's heavier. I know that Badlands ammo, is that what they're called? They're doing like
yeah,
85 grain
yeah,
bullets, which is, I'm really interested in that.
and they were still
Um,
somehow like what was it like 2700 FPS?
I think they were getting 2650 out of an 18-inch barrel. It's because they use,
Yeah.
again, not to get off on a tangent, but these guys are cool. They've got they use this new, I think it's nickel or some kind of, it's not brass, it's not steel case, but it basically allows for higher pressure,
Right.
um, while also not blowing up the chamber.
Yeah, because
Um,
that's some spicy velocities for 85 grain out of an AR. Like
right. I
that's
mean, the difference in velocity between like a 77 grain and a 68 grain is quite a lot. So I mean, if you go up another 10 grains from 77 to 85, like I know it's not 10, it's 8,
right.
um but if you go up that much, I mean that's a pretty significant uh difference in weight. So getting that velocity, and again, you go up in barrel length, you get roughly about 50 FPS variance between per inch that you go up or down.
Hmm.
Um what I've noticed at least. But still, anyway, not to go off on a tangent, but that's cool bullets. We're talking about 77 grain generally, in SMK or the OTM, the AAC OTM stuff is pretty good too.
Yeah,
Just to preface that.
yeah. Basically, if you're like, hey, I want to build a precision 5.56 AR, the first two things you're going to want to pick is your barrel and what ammo you want to shoot because those two things need to jive together. Um, or that basically nothing's going to shoot well for you. And a little later on, we can talk about because Hunter has done some research and he's doing his own 5.56 reloading, so we can talk about that a little later too. But that's
Mhm.
definitely like the two things that need to play well together, and that's something that we definitely, at least, yeah, I think we both learned the hard way because we definitely like I got a nice barrel and I was like, man, why is this thing shooting like crap? Like, and I was still trying to use just box 55 grain, just not anything nice. Then as soon as I got some 77 grain OTM stuff, because my barrel really likes that OTM, um, yeah, all of a sudden it was, 3/4 MOA groups pretty consistently. So that's
Yeah.
definitely like the first two big things that you want to pick and do some research on and make sure. And odds are you're going to have to get your barrel and try some different ammos and see what it likes. But what weight ammo you decide you want to shoot is going to determine your barrel length and your twist rate that you're going to look into. So
Yep.
just do your research there.
Yeah, and I mean some barrels like different bullets and etc. When Levi said earlier to like pick the bullet and pick the barrel, it's more just decide if you're going to be doing this like precision stuff that you're going to be spending a little bit more than you normally spend on ammo, or
Yeah.
just training ammo, or even defense ammo is pretty expensive, but just like training 55 grain or 62 grain, you'll be spending a bit more. So just kind of be ready for that. That was something that um with AAC coming out with their 77 grain variants was like, that was the reason that I think both of us got into doing it, was
Yeah.
how cheap they were able to get their precision ammo. And we can talk, I mean, once we get into the reloading section of this, we can talk a little bit more about it, but That is good ammo, and we can talk numbers and all that. I've got a bunch of data about their bullets, but we can keep talking about the builds and all that for a little bit longer.
Yeah. So that kind of segues us into the next piece that I would talk about. Right after your barrel and your ammo, because that's going to determine your accuracy. The next thing that I would definitely be looking into is a really solid trigger setup, because, well, you can definitely shoot well with just like a mil spec trigger. You can shoot a lot better when you're talking about precision, with something nice like a Geisley or, whatever, insert your favorite brand here, but just something with a good, light, clean break, and not a lot, just a nice trigger. It's just
Yeah,
going to make your entire experience better, and it's going to 100% improve your accuracy.
I agree. I know a guy that's shooting with I think he's still shooting with a mil spec trigger, and I think I've talked to him, and he'll get a trigger eventually, but I just the difference in precision that you go from a standard mil spec trigger to, I don't know, in any like aftermarket trigger, there's definitely something to be said about different brands and different models of triggers. I don't think mil spec is accurate at all. It's too heavy and there's too much creep. Um, the triggers that I'll recommend, there's two of them. My all-time favorite trigger is the SSAE from Geisley. It's a curved trigger. I think the SSE is the one that you have. That's the flat face. They're
Yeah,
the same trigger, but just one's flat face and one's curved. I actually really like the curved. I bought a flat face version of it and I did not like it at all. Um, but you like the
yeah,
flat face, so it's
yeah.
just
And
kind of to each their own.
I honestly don't have a strong preference. I just have the flat face, and it, doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
So, but it's
Um,
definitely like, I'm definitely not a proponent at all of, like, buy this piece of gear to make you shoot better. But when you are talking about like long range precision stuff, your trigger will make you shoot better. In
it
my
will.
experience, like
It will.
100%. Yeah.
And then the other one, which I'd argue is better for precision, actually, is the American Trigger Gold trigger, I think is what it is. It's a
Yeah.
bit
Yeah.
pricey and it's a cassette trigger, but it's pretty much like it's universally the best cassette trigger you can buy. I trusted it I put it in a lot of my rifles, and I ended up selling it, and I actually regret it because that was a really good trigger. That was a flat face trigger as well. It's really thin. It's super light. It's super light, and I feel like with precision, having a super light trigger is worth having it.
100%.
But the SSAE is universally, I think, is like the best trigger for an AR you can buy, and it definitely translates with precision as well.
Yeah. I think that is really just kind of the go-to trigger at this point. I mean, it's kind of the standard, I feel like.
Yeah, I know people like the Larues. I don't. I
I have
don't.
not shot
I
one, I
feel like
guess.
I've felt them before. I've shot with one before, and I don't like them. I don't really understand the hype. I know they're cheap, relative, but I mean, if you Geisley finds every single reason in the world to have a sale, and like
Right.
they'll do sales for any small little holiday. So just wait for a small holiday. They'll have a sale. You can usually pick up an SSAE or what the SAE, whatever the one that
Yeah.
you have. That you can usually find those for like $160. So
Yeah.
for like 60 50 60 bucks more than the LaRue, you get an exponentially better trigger, in my opinion. I know people
Right.
die on the hill of the LaRue triggers. I just think they're super gritty compared to
Yeah.
the Geisleys.
I mean, at the end of the day, just find what works for you. Whatever feels good to your finger, I guess. But I mean, if I
No,
was
you
going to
have to listen to
recommend,
me.
yeah, you have to like what Hunter likes, actually. Sorry, I forgot
Yep.
about that.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone can argue that the Geisley is kind of the standard and the go-to for most of the community. So yeah, I guess the next thing that I would kind of look into is going to be your optic choice, which again, our rifles weren't exactly built for this kind of thing from the start, so we both have different optics going on. and I think both accomplish the purpose, but they both have strengths and weaknesses, I guess.
Yeah. So like the voodoo that I have on mine, I've had on mine for 2+ years now.
And
Um,
it's the 1 to 10.
yep, the 1 to 10 with the SR5 reticle. I have changed my mind on the optic and the reticle as a whole. Maybe not the optic, but the reticle. I was very much a hype man for the Voodoo 1 to 10, and the SR5 reticle. Very much, I still like it. I still do like the optic a lot, and the reticle achieves its purpose. But I will say, I if I had the opportunity to swap it out with like a Mark 5 3-18, I would do that. It's the only reason is I would like a little bit more magnification for mainly zeroing. It's honestly, I don't trust my groups that I get at 100 yards with the voodoo, which I don't trust any groupings, to be honest, with lower magnification. I just don't. I feel like I shoot much better with higher magnification when I'm grouping.
Hmm.
Obviously, that's only one stage of it, so that's fine of shooting. But again, I've been reloading a bunch, and I want the most accurate data I can get, so when I'm doing load development, I know what I'm doing. So anyway,
Right.
again, we can get to that later. But
Well,
um,
and it kind of depends too. Like if you're talking about in a competition sense, your optic choice is going to determine,
which
like
class you
what.
shoot in, and you're
Yeah.
limited to certain things. I mean, that's fair. I would. It's hard for me to just say, well, go buy the attacker 1 to 8 because it's a $2,800 optic. So I get that. I just so the reason. Okay, let me back up a little bit. The reason I don't like the reticle as much as I used to is because I kind of woke up to the groupings. The middle dot is really big. It's
Yeah.
unnecessarily large. For some reason, I don't know why it's so big. They claim it's a pretty small dot, and I don't think that it's like measured at a different magnification since it's a first focal plane. But if you're all the way up at 10 or even 8 power, it's really big, and so it basically covers up the entire target. Not the entire target, but I use like 1 inch little dot stickers for when I'm zeroing, and that it covers that up. So you can't be as precise as you would like to be with like a super fine middle dot. Um, that's like the only reason I don't love the optic as much as I used to. Everything else about it is fine.
That's one of those sacrifices you make with the 1 to 10 versus like a 2 to 10 or a 3 to 18 is they have to make that reticle work at 1 and 10.
Well, I
It's
mean,
like
other
there's
companies have done it. I mean, the Attacker 1 to 8
right.
is much finer. I don't think that the Razor 1 to 10 is much better though. So I mean, if you want a 1 to 10, which again, I actually I, we made the video 2 years ago, so or just about 2 years ago. Right? Was it 2 years ago? Or was
I
it
think
a
I think it
year?
was just I think it was a year. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So we made the video about a year ago. So my opinions change, and while I would still take that rifle exactly how it was set up in that video, like 10 times out of 10, there are things that I have changed and would change about it still. And I think I would have gone with, if I still wanted an LPVO, I wouldn't have gone with a 1 to 10 because they're too expensive for what they are, and you don't get any. The difference between 8 power and 10 power is so marginal that it just
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Um,
Well, I also think we've dove down much deeper into that accuracy and long range hole since you built that gun as well.
right,
When you
and
when you built it, it was definitely like a do all, like I can do everything with this gun and not like a
it still is. I would argue. I just think that it could do even more. It could do
right, right.
even more all the things if it had a different
Yeah.
optic, base optic on it. I've swapped out the T2 to a top mounted P2, or at least I'm waiting for the mount. They've been out of the Badger mount, the top mount rings have been out of stock for like 6 months,
Yeah.
and I have called them. And anyway, that's besides the point. The point is the optic. I think you have a better optic for what we're trying to do than I do, and you can still
Yeah.
shoot in like open categories if competition is what you're trying to accomplish. If you're just wanting to
Right.
shoot long range, then go get a 3-18. That is like,
Yep.
it is the optic for 5.56 precision shooting, in my opinion. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter which brand, it doesn't matter which kind. I just think a 3-18 with a good Christmas tree reticle with like decent turrets is like perfect for
Yeah.
what we're trying to accomplish here.
And I mean, like, I started with a 1-4. I went to a 1-8. I went to a 2-10, and then settled on the 3-18. And it's just, I mean, you are sacrificing weight and size when you go up to that 3-18. But
Depending on which one you buy.
depending on how much you want to spend and what you get.
Right.
But my gun was not built at all with any kind of competition in mind. It was built with shooting coyotes and, doing outside stuff in mind. So I was like, I want to be able to see. I don't want to be short on magnification. Even if I'm not necessarily shooting 1,000 yards, I want to be able to see something coming at 1,000 yards and identify something at 1,000 yards. So yeah, I mean, I've been very happy with that 3-18. I think it's a great magnification range. And I am running a top mounted dot, so I can still shoot up close and stuff like that with it as well. But yeah, I really think it's kind of the sweet spot, especially if like I said, I am running a 14.5 barrel, but especially if you're running like an 18 or something, or even a 16, and getting a little more velocity out of it. Yeah. Which I think probably once this barrel starts opening up on me, I probably will go to at least a 16 on it. But
yeah,
just get a little bit extra velocity.
Yeah, and again, once we get into more of the ammo and the reloading a little bit later, we can talk about velocity. But just to preface, velocity is pretty big in this small of a bullet.
Yes.
Chasing velocity is not necessarily a bad thing. But again, there's only so much you can get out of a 5.56. It's pretty, like most of it, it's pretty much this is what you're going to get unless you reload and you can get a little bit out of it, a little bit more out of it. But
yeah, really velocity is the main thing that 5.56 has going for it. So,
well, it's the main thing that will get you, let me see how to describe this. It's, if you can get higher velocity out of a 5.56, you will be doing a lot better. And that's my opinion. And it's only because your holdovers won't be as bad, and I guess the wind deviation won't be as bad. But
just if you're talking about lethality, obviously, the velocity is
I guess
velocity is what's giving. Yeah. No, yeah, velocity is what's giving you that lethality with that round, and yeah, like you said, obviously from a long range perspective too. But yeah, we can kind of skim over the last couple things on the build, I guess, because we're already at half an hour here. So
yeah, I mean, bipod, stock, grip, those are kind of just personal preference. I mean, we've talked about bipods. Harris, Atlas, doesn't really matter. Stock doesn't really matter. I've used the B5 Precision. I really like that stock. So
heavy,
it's a little bit heavy, but I mean, any precision stock is gonna be that. I hate the Magpul PRS stocks. I don't know why people use those stocks.
I hate the Magpul bipods.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Everybody should hate those. Those are so bad.
I mean, maybe if you were like just wanted a super light hunting rifle bipod, maybe I could see it. But other than that, I mean, still, just get a Harris.
The difference between a Harris and a Magpul, I doubt is that much.
No, just get a Harris. They're like the same price, and the Harris is just better.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, grip, like whatever you want, doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's a personal preference thing. A lot for precision, I definitely prefer a more straight grip angle, just for a better trigger pull. But it's a personal preference thing. Just get what fits for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the things that I feel like a lot of people miss on this type of thing, on like longer range with any gun, I guess, but particularly AR guys, is understanding what dope is and how to get it, and like actually use it. I feel like a lot, because like a lot of the whole long range AR thing is kind of a recent trend, right? Like, so a lot of the guys are like, oh, well, I have a 14.5 AR with a red dot on it. I'll slap a 1-8 on it and I can shoot to 800 yards now. And then, but they don't understand how the reticle works, how dialing works, how the dope works. So maybe I figured we could just touch on that and kind of go through our process of, um, like if you were to put a new barrel in your gun right now, like how would you go about getting your dope and then verifying it?
So me personally, I would pick the ammo that I want to start with. So if we're talking about no reloading, nothing like that, and we're just gonna go out and buy a box of AAC 77 grain, I would go out, I'd buy like 2 boxes of it, and I would chrono it first. I wouldn't really do anything except for chronoing it first, and again, precision is pretty expensive, so I would almost say, no, I wouldn't almost. I will say having a chrono and knowing your muzzle velocity is mandatory.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say anything other than like it's mandatory in my opinion. There are ways, and we can talk about that in a little bit. There are ways to get your velocity after the fact without doing any or out without getting a chrono with math basically. And we can talk. I don't know like the exact process, but I do know how it works. Um, so we can talk
But
about that a little bit.
you're gonna
But
in the long run, you're gonna save a lot of time, ammo, and information by just having a
yeah,
chrono to get velocity right out the gate.
yes, and I I will say the Garmin Chrono, as expensive as it is a freaking amazing piece of like it's amazing.
Yeah, super
The
nice.
setup, the ease of use, the data that it gives you, the accuracy of that data is so good. It is so good.
Yeah,
And it is
and so easy to
I've
get.
right. It is I've told multiple people this. The Garmin I think it's the Zero C1 Pro. It is probably in my top 3 purchases of all time for like just shooting in general.
Hmm.
It might be my best purchase I've made, if I'm being honest. It is that good. Um,
I mean, it's
because
my favorite purchase you've made because I get to use it. So.
right, yeah, yeah, you don't have to buy it. So,
Exactly.
um, but yeah, it's so good. And so, having your muzzle velocity gives you a much more accurate starting point. So what I would do is I would go out, I'd shoot I'd probably shoot like 10 plus, probably 20 rounds through the chrono, just so you have the most data that you can get. And while you're doing that, again, with the Garmin, you can zero it at that point while
Yeah,
you're doing it because it's
and
a
check your grouping size, see how your
right.
barrel and ammo interact.
So shoot, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't shoot 20 rounds because at that point your barrel will probably start heating up and opening up, but I'd shoot at least 10 rounds just to get a super clear baseline of where you're going to be at. Take your time, and then get the data from the chrono, and then either I would just start out with an app like GeoBallistics, and GeoBallistics is my favorite like ballistics application, um, because it's easy to use. They give you a ton of data, and it's not overwhelming in my opinion. So I would put that in there. I would get the data that they give you initially, is what I'd get that, and then I'd start shooting out longer ranges. I'd get weather and all that, and um, usually the math is right, or at least super close.
Yeah,
Um,
and
so
you're also gonna need like all your bullet information and all of that to put in that app, and
right,
that's
right.
all. It's gonna basically do that math for you with all your bullet information and velocity. It's gonna get you in the ballpark.
Yeah, I'd say it'd get you closer than the ballpark too. If you get the right information, it'll get you pretty
Yeah,
close to perfect.
I
That's
in
how
my
good the math
experience,
is.
I've been like within like 0.2 or 3 mils most of the time.
Yeah. Um, so, and that's with the app that you're kind of guesstimating the weather with. With the Kestrel, which I have also purchased, I've gotten first round hits every single time I've used it.
Yeah,
That's how accurate that is.
it
Just
it
because the
takes the
weather is,
guesswork out of it.
yeah, that's also top three purchases. So two of my top three purchases, I don't know what the other one is, but two of my best purchases I've made have been for precision shooting, and they both are just tools, but they make everything. It is like cheating. I mean, seriously, if you can pull a trigger nice and cleanly and hold, uh, hold a rear bag steady, it's you just pull a trigger and it's honestly almost boring. And I actually, side tangent, it'll be really quick. I took my dad out to go shooting, and he had never shot with any of these tools before, and we collected chrono data and all that. And I made a profile for the rifle that he was using, which was, I think it's a Delta 5 Pro. It's a Daniel Defense, decent rifle. It's okay. It's super accurate. And we went straight out to 800 yards, and I told him what to dial for, and he shot one round and hit it, and he hit like another 6 or 7 in a row. And he's like, "Well, we can go home now," because that was super boring. Uh, and so it is. I mean, that's, and if you're just doing bench rest stuff, it is boring. So that's why doing the competition is more fun, because you do different positions and all that. So, okay,
Right.
tangent over. I would get all that information, which you can get relatively easily, and just basically go off of what the app says. And then, like I said earlier, there's a way to uh, fine tune your velocity. Um, I got to pull it up. I don't remember what it's called, but there's a way that you can offset your distance. So what you would do is you'd go in and you would, I think you have to get to like where your transonic range is, or where it's falling off. So like with a 5.56, that's around, it's around 800 yards. So, but you can do it in about half that. So you go about 400 yards, and then, yeah, it's the muzzle velocity correction. It's basically you're truing the data. So you're getting the data from muzzle velocity up to 400 or so, and then it will give you a more accurate ballistic coefficient or a ballistic curve. So it kind of,
Right.
you get two velocity data points, and so it can better, I guess, do the math to get you even more accurate results on your I guess, I don't think it'd be a dope, because that's not really what it is, but it'd
Yeah,
give
it'd
you
be
better wind calls and elevation calls. So
yeah.
what you do is you'd set up a target at like 400, 500 yards, and you'd shoot a group there, and then you'd measure the offset, and I think it's either in inches, or you have to like convert it to mils, and then insert it into the app. Which there's a section, there's like a tutorial on how to do it in the app, which is again why I love geoballistics so much. You can do it in the Kestrel as well, but geoballistics is free. Um, so you'd put that in the app, and then it'd give you an even more accurate number for all of your calls. And when
And
I say, you go ahead.
by offset, you're talking about from you're aiming at center and you're aiming what your drop is from center to where you hit
Yes,
at,
correct.
at that
That's
at that yardage.
I missed that. Yeah, you'd measure the distance between your point of aim, which is the center of the target, and then where it actually impacted at.
Yes.
Um, and that's actually, you know what? No, that's correction. That's not what it actually is. What you do is you would dial to what it tells you, or what it thinks you need to dial to. That's right. So if you're doing 400 yards, you dial, mine is like 1.6 on a 6.5, right? You dial the 1.6, you shoot, and whatever the offset is between your point of impact to where you were aiming, that's what you put in the app.
Right.
That's my
Right.
bad. So
Yeah.
it'd be like, zero point 0.3, zero point 0.4 mils off. You put that in the app, and it'll give you a new velocity essentially. And that's what I meant earlier when I said you can kind of cheat the system without having a chrono, is you can kind of guesstimate what you think what the velocity might be. just using like other people's previous data. Like with a 14.5 and the 77 grade and the AAC stuff, I'm about 2520 to 2550 FPS with like Chrono and all that. So if you had a 14.5, you're shooting AAC 77 grain OTM, you can put 2520 into your velocity. You don't know that's what it is, but you've got other people's as a reference. And then you go do this truing data, and whatever your offset is, you put that in. And now you actually have a true velocity without having to without having to chrono. And
Right.
that's a big process to do, and it's really annoying to do it. And if you don't have the distance, you can't do it. So that's why having a chrono is super nice, because every time I go out, I just set it up, put it on the table, shoot 5, 6 rounds, and like confirm my zero. And then I'll put that new chrono data, the new velocity, into my Castrol or a geoballistics or whatever, and that's my dope for the day. Not, again, I use dope, that's not actually what it is, and we'll talk about that, but
Yeah.
that's my data for the day, right? So I actually, my data changes every time I go out and shoot, because I chrono every time I go out and shoot, because
Right.
uh
Well,
atmospherics
atmospherics
are
and
different.
temperature and yeah, just everything. Yeah.
So that's why it's super expensive, $600 for a tiny little thing, but it is it'll be, if you're serious about shooting this kind of stuff, I think it is mandatory to have one. And
Yeah.
I don't think there's any use bothering with any other brand or model. I think the Garmin Zero is like the one that you need to buy.
So, and to step back and kind of recap, like if you're just getting into this, see, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go out, you're going to want to figure out a velocity. You're going to want to pick out some kind of app or do your math on your little sheet or whatever it is and get a rough idea with your velocity, your bullet BC, all of that, um what you're going to be dialing for each range. And then, so however you want to go about that, whether you have a chrono, you do the procedure to figure it out, look up what other people have had, however you need to go about that. But then the biggest thing to me that I see a lot of guys not do is once you do that, you need to go out and you need to shoot each of those ranges and record what you actually are dialing. Even if it could be up to a mil off, it could be, zero point 0.2 off, but that's what your dope actually is. Dope is data on previous engagements. And so the thing that really is important to me is it's not a dope and it's not a real number until you've gone out and shot it and verified it. Because you could put one number wrong into the app and everything could be completely wrong and you won't know until you go out and shoot it. Or
Yep.
your barrel could be 100 FPS difference for some reason. And until you go out and shoot it, you're not going to realize how different that can be. So that's the thing I really want to hit home on this part, is that you have to go out and shoot it for that to be a real number that you can rely on. And that number is still going to change a little bit with temperature and atmospherics and
Right. And
all
that's what I was
all of
going to say.
that.
You need to make sure that you write all that down,
Yes.
because it's data on previous engagements, right? So it's it's not like you go out and shoot in 30-degree weather when there's, 10-mile-an-hour wind, and then you don't shoot for 6 months, and then you go out in June or July and it's 80 degrees, 90 degrees, and might not be as windy, or it might be more windy. And
Right.
then, because temperature plays a huge role in velocity. The velocity, I mean, it differs between powder, but if you're going to be using factory loads, it might be a pretty stable powder, but it'll still change.
Yeah.
And any change in your average velocity is going to change your holdovers, or your whatever you dial. So you need to get as much data as you can, get a little book, write everything down. That way you have a reference to look up. So like next year when you go and shoot it again, you're like, "Oh yeah, I was shooting about this in this weather with this wind. I can guesstimate what I'm going to have to hold over for."
Yep.
That's why dope
And
is so
that's
good.
that's why I'll actually, like, I have like a quote unquote winter dope. So like if I'm hunting coyotes in the winter, like I know at like 30 degrees, this is my dope, and then like 50 degrees, this is my dope. Like, and that's still not going to be dead nuts accurate, but it's at least going to get you in the ballpark. If you
Right. And then
don't
you don't have
have
to,
if you don't have a Kestrel in your hand to take the atmospherics and wind and everything at that moment,
right. And that's what I was going to say. You don't have to dick around with an app or a Kestrel or anything like that. If you need to take the shot fast, you just look at your dope sheet that you taped onto your stock, be like, okay, yep, this is it. And then you take the shot. And more than likely, you'll be good to go.
yeah, depending on what level of accuracy you're seeking. If it's what I'm looking for, which is, I this is cringe to say, but minute of man or minute of coyote or whatever, like it's gonna get you there.
Yeah. That is pretty cringe.
But yeah, I know. I'd be like that sometimes.
Um, so let's push it along. I mean, we could talk about dope and all this for days. I think that we've kind of hit on the Chrono, the Kestrel. I would say having a tripod's nice. I mean, I don't love shooting off of a tripod. It's nothing more
No,
than I'm just bad at it. And I think that there are better positions to get in. I don't like I just think there's better positions to shoot off of. I think
100%.
having a tripod as like a rear bag if you needed it is actually pretty good. I've seen guys do that before. Um, I will say, okay, I remember not remember. I think I know what the top three purchases are. I think I know what the last one is a good rear bag.
Yeah.
Is the third
Yep.
one.
And I will
So
say, if you're depending on your applications, again, if you're talking about hunting, you almost have to have a tripod. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
I would say maybe one or two times out of 10 do I find a spot where I can set up where I could like shoot prone for hunting. I mean, most of the time there's long grass or there's trees, or I mean, most of the time you're going to have to be like in a sitting position at best.
yeah.
So that's one of those things where it just depends on your application. I mean, for competition, yeah, probably most of the time you're not going to need a tripod. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, strictly precision, there are stages that you have to use a tripod for, but just
yeah,
by hog saddle, whatever. What do you have again?
I have the bog, which is just the cheapy, like you can
Yeah,
get it at Fleet Farm or whatever. But
those are fine. Just I mean, any tripod that's like tall will do. There's some ones on
yeah,
there's a couple on Amazon that are basically the $1,000 Vortex one, but they're just not marked as Vortex. I'm actually gonna probably buy one of those here soon, and they're carbon fiber, and
yeah,
so those are like $200-300, but it's a lot better than $1,000 Vortex one that is literally
right.
only $1,000 because it says Vortex on it. So
But no,
so I
like you
guess
said, the rear bag though, like that's something that I, at least me personally, I came late to the game on. Like never really grabbed one, and then when I finally did, I was like, oh, okay, you can actually be this stable when you're shooting prone with a rear bag. So I mean,
yeah,
that's definitely. I mean, I don't really know. It seems like Armageddon gear is just pretty much the go-to for almost everyone.
yeah, I'd say like a good recommendation for like strictly a rear bag. We use the pint size game changer. Um, I have the regular fill. I would get the heavy fill if I were gonna do it again.
Mhm.
Um, and then for like positional shooting, I know I will be buying their. It's like Schmedium is the name Schmedium, I think. And again, heavy fill is what I would get. I have the normal fill, and I think that I would greatly benefit from the medium or the heavy. What did I say? I have the normal fill, and I would like the heavy fill.
You'd like
There
the
we
heavy,
go.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There you
Yep.
go.
So, and they're reasonably priced. I mean, they're like $100. So if I mean, it sucks you're buying a canvas bag for $100, but I mean it's a good it's a it really
Yeah,
does make a difference.
and no, get me wrong, I've seen guys shoot 1,300 yards with a sack full of or a sock full of gravel. Like you can make your own, but you, it's just going to be easier and nicer to just get something decent.
Right.
So
So it there's a a trend with precision, and there's a reason why. I mean, even when I was younger, everybody told me not to get into precision shooting because it is super, super expensive. And
Yeah.
they're they're right. I mean, if you want good stuff, it's gonna cost you some money. And it sucks, but you kind of have to go into it knowing that. You can get
Right.
by with a little bit cheaper stuff, 100%, but it makes it a lot more enjoyable and comfortable to buy the right stuff.
You're gonna pay for buying the cheaper stuff with your frustration at the cheaper stuff. I can say
Yeah,
that from experience.
that's a good way to put it.
Which that leads me to another tool that I wanted to talk about was rangefinders. Because I went a cheaper route, and I think mine is supposed to be 1,000, but that's like 1,000 yards if it's like a mountain. I mean, like if you're trying to range a target at 1,000 yards, it's not going to go well. I think like the rule of thumb that I've learned at this point is if you want to range something at 1,000 yards, get like a 1,500 yard rangefinder, and give yourself that
Yeah.
leeway. But that's 100% something. Like if you don't have an accurate range on a target, you're not going to get accurate shots on it. Even if you're talking like a 30 yard difference, it makes a difference when you're talking about 800 yards with a 5.56.
Yeah. And you can also get away with, I think Geoballistics has it built in. Again, Geoballistics is an awesome app. It's what I started with. Uh, if I didn't have the Kestrel now, even then, I still spent $800 on a Kestrel, and I still use Geoballistics all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's that good of an app, and I think it's free for like a one or two rifles. It's like $15 for as many as you want. I $15 is a small price to pay for what you get out of it.
Yeah. And it's a one
Um,
time, it's not a subscription.
right. So Geoballistics has this feature in it where you can go in and use a GPS to range your targets. And that has actually worked really well as long as you know on the GPS map layout where your target is.
Yeah.
If you're off, then you're off. Yeah, you mark your location, then you mark the location of the target. So if you know exactly like pinpoint where the target is, you're gonna be you'll be good.
Yeah.
But having a decent rangefinder is really, I would say, I think the one I have is up to 1,500 yards, and I haven't had any issues with it, but I haven't really shot anything past 1,000 yards either. Um, but if you have the 1,000 yard one and you've had issues, so I would say just, and it's the Vortex.
Yeah. Like
What is it?
Ranger, I
The
think it is.
Ranger 1500.
Yeah.
Um, they're
It's
not too
not a
terribly
bad
expensive.
rangefinder. Yeah, they're not terribly expensive, and it's not a bad rangefinder, but it's again, like you need to be ranging like a hillside, not a target for it to work at range.
Right.
But which to a certain extent, it's going to be true with anything. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's, yeah, I think like if you really want to be super successful with this type of shooting, a rangefinder, a chrono, and a good rear bag is going to be like probably the three main things that you're almost going to need.
Yeah, you can get away without like a ballistics app just finding dope. It'll take you
Right.
a lot longer initially, but it's also free, so there's not really much of a reason not to use it in my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
The things you have to buy are those three things.
Yep.
The ballistic app is free, so, and that will save you a lot of headaches. Um,
Do you
so yeah,
want to like briefly touch on the reloading side of things for it?
yeah, we can talk about that real quick. It's there's not a whole lot to talk about because it's there's a few areas that I can talk about. So the first is um expectations with reloading. Okay, at least 5.56 because that's what I've been doing. I've been loading 77 grain SMK, so the Sierra Match Kings, um, out of the powder is accurate 2520. I've done a lot of research, so if any of you guys like actually want some help with if you're trying to reload for this, like again, only 77 grain 5.56. I haven't done anything else. but I've done a lot of research on the one subject.
And
So
we are both newer to reloading, so
yeah, that's yeah.
we're not like authorities on the subject by any means, but
No, so I can point you in the right direction and tell you what works for me, but and nobody's really an authority on reloading. Everybody has their own process.
yeah,
It's
that's fair.
insane.
That's fair.
It's crazy the difference of opinions with reloading. I've never seen more opinions on any subject
Yeah,
than reloading.
and both ways can work, even if both people say the other way is stupid. Like,
Yep. Yep. So anyway, so I've been using well, I won't get into details on what I've been using. I've gotten data, I've done load development, and I've come to a decent load. I'm sub MOA with stupid good extreme spread and standard deviation. I can actually pull it up here. Um, I'll give you some data that we got from the AAC stuff. So out of, let's see, out of your, no, we'll do mine because I've done both the SMK and the. So actually, no, I won't do the SMK because that was a weird, that was a weird batch. I
yeah,
got like,
that was a spicy batch.
I got a spicy batch of SMK ammo. I was getting like almost 2,700 FPS out of a 14.5, which is way higher than it should be. So some powder dropper was not calibrated at the AAC factory on that batch. So I will go off of your data that we got. This was in February. So if we include, or actually, if we include your cold bore shot, out of a 14.5, he was getting 2540 FPS with a standard deviation of 15.7, an extreme spread of 63 FPS. So a standard deviation of 15.7 out of cheap factory ammo is actually really good. And then it's even better when you exclude the cold bore shot, which I usually do because the cold bore shot does the first shot that you take out of the day will vary. So if we take that out, it actually drops 12.8 standard deviation and 41 in the extreme spread, which is really good out of factory.
And you're talking about box ammo that you're paying like 11 something a box for,
right?
You know,
and that's like I think the OT I don't think it groups as good as it could. It groups well in your barrel, but I've not had as much success. I've shot
the
it
SMK is definitely just a little bit better.
Yes. And that uses real like Sierra Match King projectiles. The OTM is AAC's in-house projectile.
You are also stepping up to like $14-15 a box too, but yeah, that's not really what we're talking about.
Right, and I would consider that even still a really good bargain for
absolutely.
The accurate you have your groups. Your groups
absolutely.
go in half between SMK and OTM. Okay, so I will go ahead and talk about my reloads I've come up with. I am at, let's see, 2550 FPS with a standard deviation of 7 and an extreme spread of 24. So I was able to cut the SD in half, cut the extreme spread in half, or cut the extreme spread in half or by almost 2/3 and keep the same velocity. And my groups are sub MOA. So there's something to be said about reloading. You definitely can get better bullets, 100%. That's why people do it, is because you can fine tune your bullets.
And what are you like? Obviously, you have the cost of the equipment and everything, but once you're all said and done, what are you paying about per round for your reloads?
I'm under 50 cents a round. It's like 42 cents a round, which is, I mean, that's cheaper than the OTM stuff by 20 cents, you know?
Right.
So there's kind of a joke in the reloading community that like, oh yeah, you're gonna save so much money by reloading. And if you factor in just the cost of the components, 100%, you will save so much money. So if you already had the components or the gear to do it, like the presses, the dies, all the cleaning equipment, everything. It is way cheaper to reload, way cheaper. Um, but there is an upfront cost of buying all that the gear, you know.
Right.
So it's not necessarily cheaper, but you get way better bullets, way better rounds, if you do it right.
And as long as you're doing the reloading right, you're getting a huge increase in consistency.
That's true too. Yep. If you are doing, if you're doing a consistent sizing of the brass, if you're doing a consistent powder drop, and you're seating the bullet properly and consistently, you will get much more consistent, much better, more accurate ammo. And it
Yeah.
theoretically is cheaper than buying from, the factory.
Right. Yeah, reloading has really opened my eyes recently. I've been doing it for my 243 hunting rifle, and it just doing hand loads and having a buddy teach me how to do it took that gun from a like 1.5 to 2 MOA gun to a less than half an MOA gun consistently.
Yeah, your reloads have like really surprised me.
Yeah,
You
they've
found
been
like the god recipe for that barrel.
yeah. And kind of by accident, to be honest. Like I just got lucky right away. But yeah, I mean, like the last grouping I shot with my last load that I did was 0.2 MOA out of a 5-round group. So like, yeah, I think I'll stick with that. I think I'll run with that.
Yeah, I think you do pretty good there. So there is benefits to reloading. I don't think it's necessary
No,
at
no,
all.
not.
And we've gotten away with it for however many years, you know. It's kind of just the next step, I guess.
Yeah, especially for when you're talking like AR precision stuff, I would say a large majority of people just shoot box ammo.
Yeah, I don't think very many people reload.
Yeah,
Everybody in the PRS world reloads,
right.
but not a lot of people reload for 5.56. I mean, if you think about it, it is pretty cheap ammo. I mean,
Right.
even if you buy the AAC SMK, it's still only like $16 a box of 20. So you're sitting at like 75 cents around, so 80 cents around. So
Yeah.
it's not awful. And for precision ammo, that SMK stuff is really good.
Right.
Um, so I don't know. It's not necessary. It's kind of like once you get everything else figured out and you don't really know what else to do, reloading is kind of the next step. You'll kind of gravitate towards it. At least I did.
Either you'll enjoy it or you won't.
Yeah.
And I think we both enjoy it, so that's why we've, kind of
It's a
dug
very
into it.
mundane and tedious task, but it's also an extremely satisfying thing to do.
Yeah.
Once you go through the whole process of getting everything loaded and doing all the data and all the math and all that, it is it's not the most fun thing in the world. It's not. I like it because it's just a task to do, but
Uh-huh.
at the same time, I don't like it because it's just a task to do.
Right.
Um, but when you shoot that first, group and it's like way better than you've ever shot out of factory ammo, and it's way better, like ballistic data and SDs and spread and all that stuff. It's such a satisfying
Yeah.
feeling.
You're like, oh, this is why people do this.
I'm sure you just had the biggest high when you shot that .2 MOA group because like
Oh yeah.
I was getting about the same groupings out of the 5.56 stuff as I normally do. I was just getting better like numbers, but I bet shooting those groups was just like the best feeling ever.
Oh yeah. I've got the targets on my wall here and I'm looking at them right now of going from like box ammo and then the different seating depths that I tried and just watching that group walk down to 0.2 and then
Yeah,
also repeating that like with the last several batches I've loaded. It's just it's a good feeling.
that's awesome. That's
But
yeah, that's a good
yeah,
feeling.
for sure. But yeah, I guess
We've
I
ranted
feel
and
like
rambled and talked
yeah,
about as much stuff as we can. I'll apologize. I go off on tangents and I branch off and all that.
well, I
I
think
hope
that's
it
kind of
wasn't.
what
I
I'm
know
sorry, go
you're
ahead.
used to it, so I don't know if to somebody like new listening or somebody that's listened before,
Yeah.
understands that's how my brain works. But I hope that there is some knowledge that could be have learned from what we talked about today. And like always, uh, we are more than happy to just kind of sit down, have a conversation, text us on Instagram, message us on, or I guess leave a comment on the YouTube uh, video that we're going to make of this. Just if you need to talk about something, I we're not big enough for there to be enough people to talk to. So I like sitting down and talking to people about this kind of stuff. And I know Levi does too. So
Yeah. And ultimately, that's the reason we're doing this at all, is because, like, we've struggled through stuff the hard way many, many times, and we've learned some stuff along the way. So, if we can help other people not struggle so hard, that's why
yep.
we kind of do this. So,
Yeah. It's exactly why. It's just a
yeah.
really good opportunity to.
And I don't think either of us consider ourselves like professionals or experts or anything like that. Like I said, we've literally just struggled through this and figured some of it out ourselves, and wish we would have had someone to kind of do what we're trying to do. So,
Yep. Yeah,
but
that's all it is. I've made so many mistakes financially with shooting, that I wish somebody had told me differently, like I'm trying to now. I also know how difficult it is to listen to somebody telling you that what you're thinking is not good. So
right.
if you need somebody to help convince you otherwise of what you're thinking about, um, or if you need
Well,
somebody to reassure you, like,
yeah. And there's so many opinions on the internet. It's so hard to know what's right and what's wrong. And maybe what we're saying is not right or wrong for you either, but we're willing to help and have a conversation if you guys are looking for that. So, but yeah, I think we pretty well covered it. I guess we can wrap this one up. And
yeah,
if you guys are liking this format, we'd like to make more actual videos, but again, like I said, we both have busy lives. We're not super close to each other, so we don't get to actually be in person a ton. And when we do, we don't always want to worry about doing YouTube videos. So if
yeah,
you
we
guys like
always we
this,
always talk about like, oh, we're gonna get all this stuff done, and then
yeah,
we just are like, nope, we're just gonna go hang out and shoot.
yeah,
So
then we start shooting. We're like, yeah, that sounds kind of dumb. Let's just shoot our guns.
yep,
So,
pretty
but
much the
yeah,
exact conversation we had.
yeah, pretty much. So, but yeah, we'll wrap this one up. If you guys like this, let us know. It's definitely a lot easier for us to put out this type of stuff if it's helpful to you. If not, then we won't worry about it. So I
Yep,
guess we'll see you guys on the next one.
yep. We'll see you guys later.